Clubs lost 1.38 billion, a record figure since 2009. So what are the clubs going to do to make up for the losses?
As well, we're with sports broadcaster and a journalist, Aidan Magee, to discuss this. Aidan, when people hear these these sums, 1.3 billion or whatever, in relation to football, they say, oh, well, there's billions and billions in football. They'll make that up. Is that true?
Not really, Mercy. I mean, the thing is that the bandwagon just keeps on rolling. Every single year we say, football's out of control in terms of finances. The TV deal won't be as big next time. They're going to have to plug the losses somewhere. You're going to need more benefactors coming in to throw money at the problem. But that's eventually what they do. And it also shows that FIFA's financial fair play rules aren't really working because these clubs are not getting their financial governance in order. Most football clubs are run like ordinary medium to large-sized businesses. You've got a CEO earning 300 or 400 grand a year. You've got commercial managers. You've got everyone else in the business earning the same money as they would do if they're working for a FTSE 100 company. But you've got this big hole in the middle, which makes it an extraordinary business, which is transfer fees, player wages and agents' fees. And this is the problem. This is why it's a bit of a basket case. That's why it's an extraordinary business. And Steve Parris, the Crystal Palace chairman, said a few months ago, he said, when you buy a football club, and as he did with Crystal Palace back in 2010, he said, you know you're going to lose money. You've just got to decide how much you're going to lose. So if you look at this year's figures, they're actually not as bad as they sound because there was a bigger loss the previous year. And don't forget, that was 2019-20. Two-thirds of the games were played that year, so they had a full crowd in. So matchday revenue wasn't affected. This period that these results are covering today from this report, from 2020 to 21, there were no crowds at all. So the matchday revenue went down to an aggregated from 700 to 30 million pounds. That's a hell of a drop.
Yeah. Will any clubs go bankrupt, Aidan? Does that ever happen? Something's ringing a bell in the back of my head. Who went bankrupt?
Bury.
Bury?
Yes.
Well, that's why it's ringing the bell in the back of my head. It's literally my hometown. Yeah. I'm so sorry to the residents of Bury that I forgot that. But of course they did.
They did, yeah. And there were 3 divisions below the Premier League. It's a completely different landscape.
Yeah.
They're living hand to mouth, those clubs. And the greed of the Premier League has been often criticised for starving those smaller clubs of money. And players still come from there, and you need that pyramid to sustain the clubs at the very top. But in terms of the Premier League and the finance, every year on year, we're saying it's got to stop, it's got to stop. The gravy train just keeps on rolling. And we'll be having the same conversation, I'm sure, in 5 years' time. And the biggest problem is wages. When you've got players earning £200,000 a week, that's where your expenditure goes.
Yeah, and I wonder how this affects, because obviously these clubs are huge. I wonder how all this affects smaller clubs, local clubs. How does this affect training institutions for younger footballers trying to get into professional football? They must be struggling even more, surely.
Yeah, they are, because, matchday revenue is much, much more important the further down the pyramid you go, because if we talk about Bury as a case in point, they don't get the big TV deal. They get a very minuscule share of TV revenue to commensurate with the fact that they're in League Two. So it's all about the money that comes through the gates. That's the only revenue they get. So if they're not getting that, as they weren't in the pandemic, that's when you see clubs go to the wall. I'm amazed that only one club in that period really suffered and went to the wall. It's incredible. We're the only country really that have 4 divisions. And it's unsustainable.
What did happen to Bury in the end?
Bury they've gone down. The stadium is still there, Gig Lane, but they're reformed, and they've had to start at the very, very bottom. Now, at that level, they're quite a big club, so they will be back. I'd say within 5-6 years they'll be back. It is possible. AFC Wimbledon launched 20 years ago on a park because Wimbledon Football Club got taken away to Milton Keynes, and so they started on a park, and now those 2 teams are playing in the same league, which is absolutely incredible considering they were just started by a bunch of people on Wimbledon Common back in 2002.
So with these